A warning for the U.S. Europe is having an energy crisis, and experts say it's because of a lack of investments in fossil fuels. Yet Biden and the Democrats want to do the exact same thing here in America. Joining me now to talk about it is Alaska Governor Mike Dunleavy. Governor, good to see you. So shouldn't what's happening in Europe and their push to go green be instructive for us here in the U.S. that maybe that's the wrong path for us to go down?
It should. Anytime you have a social engineering approach that's forced conversion off of energy such as fossil fuels, it doesn't make sense. And you know it's going to have a difficult time actually becoming what they think it is. So, for example, right, California just talked about outlawing the combustion engine, and 2 days later they say they're asking their people to conserve energy, electrical energy, because of the heat wave there. So a lot of stuff doesn't make sense, and it's going to be a very interesting next few years.
You know, I think you make a good point. I was going to ask you about that. You have Gavin Newsom saying we're going to go to EVs by 2035, outlawing gas engines. And then a couple days later, they're like, oh, listen, you can't charge your EV because there's not enough electricity on the grid because we're having a heat wave. I mean, I would hope that constituents, whether they were just common sense in Wisconsin, Alaska, or California, would go, hey, listen, this gives me a concern for my future that I can't even drive my car.
Yeah. I think what's happened is people need to start asking just a couple more questions. Like when you plug it into a wall, where does that electricity come from? How is it made? What type of fuel is used? And I think we have a little deeper conversation on that. I think we might get more people, I guess, acting with a little more common sense.
You know, I think we would. I want to ask you about the energy in Alaska. Obviously, you're a big energy producer in your state. What impact have the Biden policies had on Alaska?
It's been a slog ever since this administration has taken over. I mean, the previous administration under Trump was all about opportunity. What do you need in Alaska? How can we help? This is governance. We say actually sanctions by fiat. We'll get a letter. We'll see it in a press release. We'll hear that another oil play has been shut down or a timber play is not going to happen. And so, you know, when the president was going over to Saudi Arabia and was talking about going to Venezuela, we would have bought his ticket up here to sit down and talk with us about producing energy.
Yeah, I mean, look at home. Look to your home states, whether it's Alaska or Texas, North Dakota. We have great energy sources here. And again, you're going to look to a communist regime. Also, you know, Governor, you look in the rare earth minerals that are mined outside of the U.S., you know, to take us from oil and gas to EVs, and even the fact that we have to rely on China to make sure we can have batteries and windmills and solar panels to go all EV. Doesn't make any sense that we would rely on a communist country like China and not on the U.S.
We're scratching our heads almost on a daily basis up here because we deal with the environment better than anywhere else in the world when we do our oil, gas, and mining. So why would you want to send this over the seas, overseas, where there's social injustices, there's child labor, they don't have the same environmental regulations, we're empowering strongmen. None of it makes any sense. I mean, it really doesn't.
No, it doesn't at all. It's concerning. As a guy who wears an American lapel pin, we're selling the country out. I want to switch gears on you, though. You wrote an op-ed for The Hill entitled "Stopping the Fentanyl Crisis Demands Policy Changes at the Border and with China." And by the way, Governor, I agree with you. Alaska is the furthest state from the border, but you're still being affected by the fentanyl crisis. Talk to us about what impact fentanyl has had on your state.
Oh, we've had a very steep increase in fentanyl overdoses, fentanyl deaths. We're intercepting enormous amounts of fentanyl coming into Alaska. And you're right. If we're intercepting fentanyl up here in Alaska, in which we have no border with Mexico and we're actually closed off by Canada in terms of territorial border, I can't imagine what's happening in the lower 48. And so the open border policy, once again, is certainly a portal for fentanyl coming into this country, and we see it here in Alaska.
You know, Governor, a couple months ago, we lost the great congressman from Alaska, Don Young. He was the dean of the House. I served with him. He was a wonderful, wonderful man with a gentle heart. He had a loud bark, but he was a wonderful man. Sarah Palin ran for that seat. We kind of think of Alaska as a Republican bastion, but Sarah Palin lost the congressional race. What's happening in Alaska where a Republican would lose to a Democrat?
Well, we have a new election approach up here. We do elections differently now. There was a voter initiative here a year and a half ago in which I think called ranked choice voting is now in place, and it also has a jungle primary component to it. So really, you don't run up here anymore as a Democrat or Republican in specific primaries. And in the general election, in the general election, the top 4 that come out of the primary go into the general election. And if the individual does not get an outright 50% plus, then there is a voting mechanism, an algorithm in which votes are then allotted from the 4th place person who will drop off in the first round, and those votes are allotted. And so we're trying to figure this out. You know, we're going to see where this goes, but it's certainly a strange thing to a lot of people, yeah. And we're just going to hope for the best and see what happens.
And just to be clear, Governor, this was to fill the seat until January 3rd, the remainder of Don Young's term. The election to fill a
Yes.
2-year term is going to be during the November elections. That's right?
That's correct. That's correct, yes.
And Governor Palin is back on the ballot there?
Yes, Palin and others will be on the ballot. This also applies to our Senate races. Senator Murkowski and Kelly Shabak are running for that seat, as well as Governor. Myself and some others are also running under this new election approach.
Governor, it's an interesting way to run elections. It takes a little while to figure out who won and who lost. But listen, I want to thank you for joining me today on Kudlow. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Great to be on. Thank you.
All right.